Hello, students. I'm excited to share with you an example of an outline that I made for this speech that you're doing. And the reason I'm going to all of this trouble is because I want you to create an outline that really works for you, but that also divulges a lot of the information that you plan to share in an organized way. Now, you may have different ways of organizing your speech. I organized mine according to the most important parts or uses of an emu, which is the topic that I chose. You might have something different, like different consequences, different causes. You might have just different aspects of something. You might have a how-to, different steps that you do. So the points are not necessarily going to be uses like I have. You might have different points that you're going to make. Well, but let me share with you my outline and how I did it. First of all, you'll see right here that I have created, well, I already did this for you earlier, right? And so that's in a previous screencast. Well, here we have the introduction. And you'll see you can read this on your own. I put it in your Google Classroom so you can read over it. I basically wrote out the script of what I'm going to do in my introduction. Now, I don't say introduction. I start here. When it comes to big birds, most of you probably have your head in the sand or your understanding extends as far as Sesame Street. Now, that's my attention getter. I try to use a little humor. I try to make a little reference to what people think ostriches do, which put their head in the sand, which they don't, and maybe something that's going to catch your attention. And then I transition into different things that I say about big birds, some assumptions that people have, etc., until I get to my thesis and preview. You'll notice all of this I'm going to say in my introduction. You want to say enough that people are interested in what you have to say. You don't have to focus right on what you're going to talk about. I don't even mention emus. I'm basically mentioning big birds, which is a category that an emu is under. So look through this. It's pretty funny. It's pretty interesting. And eventually you get to the thesis and preview, which I already shared. And I made that my second major point. So my first point is my introduction. My second point, I made the thesis and preview. Now you'll see some people, when they make outlines, they make thesis and preview kind of like I do transitions later on, where it's like its own little thing. All right, which you can do that if you want, but I made it my second point. Then I jump into my first point, which is the meat, and I talk about Chick-fil-A, and then I just put continued information because I'm not going to write everything I know about emu meat. It would be very long. Then I wrote this transition here, and notice what it says. You may be getting hungry, but I have not even hit on the most impressive part of the emu. Before I do, however, I want to tell you a little bit about the leather. It is not as popular as the meat, but it certainly is useful. And then I go into my second point, which is leather. So I took a non-traditional route. I didn't start with the least useful all the way up to the most useful, which I could have. If I did that, I would go with leather, meat, oil. Instead, I tried to capture the audience talking about meat, something they're familiar with. Then I go into the leather, which is the least important, but I just use this transition here to make it interesting. And then I talk about the leather. Now, instead of going through all of the sentences that I would write, I just wrote some basic words here like softness, texture, and design. Those are the things I would talk about with regard to leather. Then my next transition statement, which is as fascinating as all of this is, I have only a little time to expound on the most amazing part of the emu, the oil. You're probably thinking, the oil? There's oil in an emu? Yeah. So if I were giving a speech about this, which I may do for you just out of kindness, then I would talk about the oil. It would talk about how it's extracted from the emus, how the Aborigines used it, all the benefits of it, which there are many, and then the actual products you can buy on the market, which you can buy products with emu oil in them. Now, I could put a transition statement here into the conclusion, but I just made it part of my conclusion, which is why aren't there emus in every grocery store? Why can't I walk into Kohl's and buy an emu leather purse? Why isn't emu oil in more of the products to help my pain and skin? So that's basically a transition into my conclusion, which is where are all the emus? Why can't I buy all this stuff? And I would talk about that in my conclusion here about our economy and stuff. And then I end with something that kind of goes back. I go full circle. I kind of go back to the introduction. I reference it, but with something more interesting. And I start here. In the meantime, right here. At least you have started on your journey out of ignorance. And to help you a little bit, no, emus and ostriches, for that matter, do not put their heads in sand. And now you don't have your head in the sand figuratively either. So that's kind of a clever way to go full circle and remind you that, hey, now you know something you didn't know before, and it's going to be helpful to you. And I'll bet while you're watching this video, you're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff about emus I didn't know. Exactly. There's a lot of stuff that you know about your topic that people in class might be interested to know just by listening to you. And so sometimes you don't know that you want to know something until someone tells you. And that's hopefully how it's going to go. But the more interesting your speech, the more time you put into this, the more clever you make the introduction and the conclusion, the more you are passionate about it, the more other people are going to say, yeah, I should know about that too. Even if I never do it, I may never taste emu in my life. I may never buy a product with emu oil, and I might never have an emu wallet, purse, or keychain. But darn it, I needed to know about this. And so hopefully you will be engaging enough to do the same for your audience in this classroom, and then maybe even beyond if we do stuff with videos. But that's just me dreaming. I hope this has been a helpful tutorial about making an outline for an informative speech, and you're going to do an amazing job doing it too. Good luck.